made it here at 20 to 11. Unfortunately, Hackney Council decided to have a marathon this morning and didn't bother telling the AA or the RAC or the BBC or any other website that I check my traffic on before I do any driving. So you have no idea how terrible it is to keep driving down roads and seeing a road closed sign at the end and your sat nav is telling you to drive ahead. So all I can say is, for the goodness of the kingdom of God, I'm very glad there wasn't a fish on the back of my car this morning. I don't think I've driven in a very Christ-like way to be here. But it is great to be here, and it's like coming home. For those who don't know me, I lived just down the road in Lubbock Road for 5 years before Church Army's offices relocated to Sheffield, so this was my church. So it's great to be back. And thank you for having a big concert last night. I saw a little clip on your website to raise money for our work, so thank you for that. And before I start, it's just my way of saying thank you for all of you for the work that you do to support Church Army around the year. Your generosity, the financial support, the prayers means so much. And I am absolutely delighted you're part of the week of prayer. I was in the room that thought that up. I sit on Archbishop Justin's evangelism task group. The Archbishop of Canterbury is passionate about evangelism, and he got a group of us together. We meet with him quarterly, and we are about trying to dream dreams about how to help change the Church of England. It's somewhat of a significant challenge. We realise that if you look through history, every time there's been a significant change in our nation, when more and more people have come to know Jesus, it's always been preceded by the Church praying. So it seemed to us like the moment to go, well, let's get the Church of England to pray. And it's been unbelievable. I'm so pleased you're part of this, and thank you. Over 4,500 churches across England have signed up to this project. And that's 4,500 churches going to be full of people praying all week. Simply that more people come to know Christ in their lives. And it's just a joy that you're a part of that. I just texted the Archbishop this morning to tell him that you're part of it, and asked him to give you a shout out next Sunday evening from Canterbury Cathedral. I can't promise that, but I have asked him. Before I open this passage that we've had read to us a few moments ago from Matthew, let me tell you just a quick little bit about what we're doing. So, if I can have my slides up, that would be great. So, I lead a charity called Church Army. I've got a team of about 600 people who work all over the United Kingdom and Ireland, whose job it is to try and bring the Christian message to those who would never step inside a church like this. People battling addictions, people who are homeless, people who are in poverty. We run hundreds of food banks, we run hundreds of youth centres, we run some of the biggest homeless projects in Britain. It's a phenomenally big and wide organisation. Let me give you a couple of snapshots. This map excites me. The blue dots are where we currently have Church Army projects. The red dots are where we're going to be opening Church Army project in the next 12 months. Isn't that fantastic? At a time of organisation shrinking, I'm going to double my organisation over the next year, which is fantastic. And the reason I've done that is because wonderful people like you are supporting me. But also, I'm able to tell you for every pound you give Church Army, I'm able to raise £1 more from the Church of England. And so over the next year, we're doubling our work across the country. And I'm not going to tell you about two of those dots. Let me take you to Bradford, to a project called Sorted, that reaches marginalised young people. This project reaches over 400 young people every single week, of whom only 1% ever had been to church before. This is an area of massive deprivation, huge social need, massive levels of teen pregnancy, huge levels of drug abuse. The police have told me, the Chief Constable of West Yorkshire Police has told me, that crime has gone down in this part of Yorkshire since my team showed up. Now that's what the church is supposed to do, isn't it? Change society. But as well as that, we've raised up leaders and sent them out to do the same thing in other places. So we've now launched a project in Thamesmead, just down the road in South East London, in an area equally difficult place. And we've now got 40 and 50 young people in Thamesmead, and we're just going to plant another one into Leeds. But if you go back to this map, you'll see there's only one dot on the far west coast of Ireland. See it? It's a place called Ballina in County Mayo. Think of Father Ted and you've pretty much got the territory, okay? It was filmed there. This is really exciting, because Ballina is the first time we've ever launched anything in the Republic of Ireland. And this is a community where the church is completely and utterly distrusted. The huge scandals of the child sex abuse in the Roman Catholic Church has decimated trust in the institutions of Christianity in the west of Ireland. So we've gone in there, not just as ourselves, but with the Roman Catholics, the Methodists, the Anglicans, and the Presbyterians, and the Pentecostals backing us. We've planted in our first evangelist. We're going to add another one in about 6 months' time. We launched it in the Catholic Cathedral, and the vision is to grow a new church in an area where the suicide rate is 3 times higher than London. And of course, let me take you to London, where we have our homeless project called Marylebone. This is the largest project that serves homeless women in the whole of Britain. In any one day, 400 homeless women will make their way through our doors. At a time when the government's cuts have meant I've lost £1 million from my budget, we've increased our work in Marylebone. Last year, we provided 40,000 nights of accommodation. We moved over 100 women from the streets of London into their own homes, and we provided 27,000 hours of professional clinical support. Isn't that amazing? And people like you are helping us do that. In a time when the sector is in huge trouble, Westminster Council have told me that our project is probably the finest in the City of London. Now, you know I occasionally do the odd name drop. Well, this is probably my favourite name drop. This year we secured a patron for Marylebone, the very gorgeous and very wonderful pop star Ellie Goulding. I saw her, she rang us up one day and asked us could she give us money. I thought, bring it. I said, bring it on. And so Ellie has become our patron, and there's what she says. I'm so pleased to be the first ever patron for the Marylebone Project. This amazing place serves hundreds of homeless women every week and helps them make a fresh start. I love how the project empowers women to make the changes to transform their own lives. I saw this for myself when I visited a few weeks ago. I was inspired by the stories of the women we met. Ellie said to me, Mark, could we go and meet the Prime Minister and help sort of shake his neck and try and help him take homelessness more seriously? I said, certainly. So I wrote a letter off to Number 10 and asked to see the PM. Ellie Goulding and I would like to come and see you. I didn't get a reply. And then I did get a reply. It was that, dear Mr. Russell, thank you for your letter. Yours sincerely, the Private Secretary to the Private Secretary's Dogs, Bodies, Understudies, Lay Assistant. And I thought, typical, I just got ignored. And I know the man gets millions of letters. But unfortunately for him, Ellie told the political editor of the Daily Mirror. My phone rings, it's the Private Secretary to the Prime Minister, Mr. Russell. We've just realised that you've written to us and we didn't reply. Could you possibly relocate the letter? So I relocated the letter, and I now have an appointment to meet the Prime Minister. And I have the Minister responsible for homelessness coming to visit us in June. The things that a pop star can do. So that's our Marylebone project. So thank you for helping us, because what you're doing is you're making it possible for us to change the lives of some of the most vulnerable people in the UK. As I regularly tell you, God has given me all the money I need to run Church Army. He's just placed it into all of your bank accounts. And so it's very good that you're helping me redistribute that. But the last thing I will tell you, in a world at the moment where trust in chief executives of charities is plummeting through the floor, where trust in charities is plummeting through the floor, the key thing you need to look for whenever you support a charity is not what good work it does, it's how much of your pound that you give actually goes to support that good work. Church Army's percentage is probably one of the lowest in the country that we spend on leadership and governance and administration. For every pound you give me, only 8.5 pence of it is spent running Church Army. The other 91.5 helps people like this, which I think is pretty impressive. Now, you probably have picked up from my dulcet tones that I didn't grow up in Kent. But I grew up in God's own country, the beautiful and very wonderful Northern Ireland. Are there any Game of Thrones fans here? One, two, a few. Well, pretty much significant waves of Game of Thrones are filmed in Northern Ireland. And lots of it's filmed in Northern Ireland. And because Northern Ireland is just the most beautiful, beautiful place. And one of the mountains that they use for Game of Thrones, you'll see it on the top right-hand corner, one of the mountains they use is called Slieve Donard, which is the highest mountain in Northern Ireland. Now, if I were to take you to Slieve Donard right now, you would find, going up Slieve Donard, that there are piles of stones that look like that. They're called cairns. And they're long before maps and sat-navs were invented. They were helping people navigate their way around a very busy sort of range of hills, but you could very easily get lost and never be found again. So if you're a rock climber or a mountain walker, you look for these as you go through the moors, and they navigate you forward. This is a cairn. It's a signpost. Doesn't matter what the weather, doesn't matter how bad it is, you can still find your way around if you keep following these. Reading the Bible, it can be very easy to get lost. There is just so much there. So many parables, so much wisdom, so much narrative, so much teaching, so much story, so much history. Lessons about this and that, Jesus meeting this person, that person, Jesus confronting that person and challenging that person. And St. Matthew is the most genius of writers. And what St. Matthew has done is he has positioned a series of little cairns right the way through the book of Matthew. Little signposts that help us find our way. If you were looking carefully at the reading that was just read for us, in verse 28, Matthew says, when Jesus finished saying these things. Well, that is a signpost. It's a cairn. Let me show you what I mean. There are 5 of them in Matthew's Gospel. Matthew 7:28, when Jesus finished saying these things. Matthew 11:1, after Jesus had finished instructing the disciples. Matthew 13:53, when Jesus finished these parables. Matthew 19:1, when Jesus finished saying these things. Matthew 26:1, when Jesus finished. See the pattern? These little markers, right the way through Matthew, help us find our way around. So why did Matthew put those 5 there? Well, what's he doing? Well, here's what he's doing. He's dividing up the 5 parts of the Gospel of Matthew. The Sermon on the Mount, instructions for evangelism and mission, the parables, the teaching around the community of Christ, and the end times. You see how each of those fit with that? So what we've got in our reading today is we've got the end of a chapter or a section of the book of Matthew. And Matthew has put in this wee signpost after Jesus had said these things. But why 5? Well, the reason why there are 5 is because Matthew was a very Jewish writer. And he's trying to show his audience that Jesus is the fulfillment of the Jewish law. And of course, every Jew knows that the law is made up of 5 books. You see all the symmetry? This is not a random book. The Bible is like an onion. It can make you cry, but if you peel the layers back, you find more and more and more and more. And Matthew's trying to tell the people who are listening to him that this Jesus bloke is not some random guy who stands up and says all these great things. He's not some great new charismatic leader. He's trying to show his readers, and he's trying to show you and me, that Jesus is the fulfillment of everything that had gone before. And where is Jesus saying these things? On a mountain. Where did the law come from? A mountain, when Moses got the 10 Commandments. And this is the genius of Matthew's Gospel. And it's no wonder at the end of our little passage, it says, and the crowds were amazed at his teaching. He taught as one with authority. The Bible is a brilliant and amazing and transformative book. But the passage that we've had read for us tonight, or this morning, about the builder building his house upon the rock, or the builder building the house upon the sand, isn't just some random lecture on building strategy. Because just a couple of miles away from where Jesus is saying this, the temple is being rebuilt. So the people of this area, there was this massive building project going on in front of them. So when Jesus takes building as his image, it's on the money, it's absolutely up to the minute, live visual aid. And so what's he saying? Whoever hears my words and puts them in practice is like a wise man who built his house on a rock. The rains came, the streams rose, the winds blew, but the house did not fall, for its foundations were on rock. But those who hear my words and don't put them in practice are like a foolish person who build their house on sand. The rains come, the winds blow, and beat against the house, and it will fall down with a great, great crash. I may be 41 years old, but put me on a beach and I'm 9. And I had this urge to build sandcastles. I'm very fortunate that God has now given me a 2-year-old nephew, so I now have a very good reason to build sandcastles and pretend they're for him. But when I was like 9 years old, my family went on holiday to France, to the Vendée region of France. And there's this beautiful beach near a town called Jars-sur-Mer called La Plage de la Mine. And we got there, and I just started to learn French when I was about 8 or 9 years old, so I knew a little bit in my head. And I was able to work out from the signpost and from asking the woman beside it that there was a sandcastle building competition the week I was on holiday. Now, I am the most competitive person you've ever met in your life. My staff refuse to play games with me. Whenever we have anything in the office, they just decide in advance that they're going to put me on the winning team because I'm absolutely going to be tortured a little if I lose. So I wanted to win this sandcastle building. I wanted to picture this big stretch of sand. I've commandeered it by putting stones around it. Nobody else is having this piece of sand. I had eaten about 100 lollipops over the course of the week so I can collect the little sticks. I have made those little sticks with glue and a little string into a little bit of a drawbridge. I've made flags on the other ones. But you know the big problem when you build a sandcastle and build a moat all the way around it, and you put water in the moat? What happens to the water? It sinks. Not mine. Cling film. I cling filmed the moat all the way around. My poor mother went to make the sandwiches for the beach the following morning. Where the hell's the cling film? It's on the beach already, I'm sorry. So I pictured this huge castle, turrets, towers. It wasn't quite like that, way better. You know, flags, drawbridges, towers. You've got the picture. The judges came round with their clipboards. I hope there's nobody French here, but they looked so angry and cross. Because you know why? Because they thought I was English. I went, no, je suis Irlandais. Ah, mais oui! They liked me after that. So built the sandcastle. Who won? Bring it on. First prize! It's a bottle of red wine. What does a 9-year-old want with a bottle of red wine? My dad was very happy. But I won this competition. I was so happy. I went home. I couldn't sleep. I was so excited. I thought I'd won the World Cup. You know, like Wimbledon. I was like on top of the world. I made more drawbridges. I got more flags. I was going to go back the next morning and make my castle bigger and better. And I went back. And I ran down the beach. I couldn't see my sandcastle. Where is it? Who's taken it? Who's wrecked it? And suddenly, sticking out of the sand, I saw a flag. And over there I saw this cling film. And suddenly as the boy fell, and he learned the lesson that Jesus was trying to tell his listeners. If you build on sand, it dies, it sinks, it's gone. You want something to last, you have to build it on a rock. So my question to you today is, what are you and what am I building our lives on? What are we building our lives on? Are we building our lives on Jesus, on His Word, on His love, His grace, His mercy? Or are we building our lives on something else? Are we building our lives on our health? What happens if we're sick? Are we building our lives on our career? What happens when we're made redundant? Are we building our lives on money? What happens when we lose it? Are we building our lives on rock, or are we building our lives on sand? It matters what we build our lives on. That's what Jesus is saying in this passage. It matters what we're building our lives on. Foundations are crucial. But you know the only time you know when your foundations are important? When the storm comes. You only truly find out how good your foundations are when the storm comes. And where do we see a storm in the Bible? We see Jesus out of the boat, fast asleep. snoring blissfully at the front of the boat, or is it the back? Probably the back. And the disciples are terrified. This little rickety boat, the storm has come up, the waves are crashing over, the wind is blowing, and they're screaming, they're terrified. And suddenly they go, Jesus is here, he'll sort it out. So they run down and they wake him up, and they shake him, and they say these words, Teacher, do you not care we're going to drown? It's one of the most important and profound and deepest questions in the whole Bible. Does Jesus care they're going to drown? Does Jesus care when your parents are arguing? Does he care when you're single and don't want to be? Does he care when you're surrounded by bills and no idea how to pay them? Does he care when someone you love's got cancer and you're terrified for them? Does he care when your husband's left you? Does he care when someone is sick? Does he care when you think someone is better than you? And he stands up at the front of the boat, and in two words, he goes, Be still! And everything stops. Like that. I suggest the only thing you would have heard was the knocking of the knees of the disciples, who probably were more scared after the storm stopped than before. Good grief. Did you see what he just did? Don't ever get on the wrong side of him. He'll turn you into a tortoise. Be still and stop. I was with one of my staff a few weeks ago who's battling cancer. I'm not sure whether this guy will be able to pull through. And he looked at me and he said, Mark, I've been thinking about the story of Jesus being at sea when he spoke calm over the storm. He said, I feel I've got a storm raging all around me. And Jesus does have the power to calm it like that. But he hasn't. I said, well, John, how do you react to that? He said, because Jesus pointed at me and said, be still. So the storm is raging around me still, but in my heart, I am still. Isn't that profound? And that's what Jesus does for us. He will sometimes calm the storms around us, but sometimes he gives us the calm and the peace inside of us to handle it when it doesn't. But you see, the disciples had forgotten he was in the boat. And for 20 centuries since, we've forgotten that Jesus is in the boat. They underestimated him, and so do we. And storms come across our lives all the time, don't they? The kind of storm that comes when you open your mouth and say something inappropriate. The kind of storm when someone who promised to love you decided they don't and love someone else. The kind of storm when your parents get divorced. The kind of storm when you find you've got cancer. Storms caused by things we've done wrong. Storms caused by something we've not done at all. And if you're anything like me, we walk around with a face that says everything's fine. And just once in a while we can fool ourselves. That we're made of steel, that nothing can hurt us, no one can harm us, that we've got life under control. What we fear most is what we can't control. The car coming across the white line with no warning. The person who infiltrates our relationship and steals our partner. Good Mark, come on. You always make us laugh when you come to Israel. Why aren't you doing that tomorrow? Because actually, there is hope in this passage. The hope is, with the right foundation, our lives can handle any storm that comes our way. But I want to suggest to you and to me this morning that I think we build our lives on the wrong things. We build our lives on the wrong foundations. And I'm going to give you just a couple of foundations I think we build our lives on. The first one is feelings. We had a great time in church today. We feel blessed. God is close. Our faith is strong. But next week, perhaps church isn't quite as fun, or the preacher wasn't quite as good, and we feel more discouraged. That would never happen here, of course, would it? We can't build our lives on how we feel. Feelings will lead us the wrong way. The other thing we can build them on is our hopes for the future, our dreams. But you know what? What happens when life doesn't go the way you hoped? Well, you don't get the promotion you thought you were going to get. And thirdly, we can build our lives on other people's faith. Our husband or our wife's got a strong Christian faith, or our mum or our dad, or our brother or our sister. You can't build your life on this foundation of somebody else's faith. And you can't build your life on your church leader, because they'll make mistakes too. We have to build our lives on the rock. I've got a friend of mine called Tony Campolo, who's a famous speaker in America who runs a charity called Habitat for Humanity. And Habitat for Humanity builds houses all over the world for people who can't afford a house. It's an amazing charity. And Tony's charity built 15 houses outside Tampa in Florida. And a hurricane came, and the whole town got flattened, except the 15 houses that were built by Habitat for Humanity. And CNN were there like, Mr. Campolo, can you explain this? Can you explain why all these houses are flattened and your 15 still stand? And Tony said this, yes, for when Habitat built a house, we built a house on the rock. And they didn't get it. The journalists were going, Habitat built a house on the rock. What he means is that when they build a house, they fill it full of prayer and they pray about it, and they build their house on the rock. Friends, this morning, we live in a world where we are very talented people. God knows in this part of the world, you can't live in Chislehurst and not be talented and gifted and good at what you do. How did you afford the mortgage? Or the rent? I'm speaking to a congregation of gifted and talented people. You can do life on your own. You don't need God, so you think. It's only when things go belly up and pear-shaped and everything goes the wrong direction, then we're our foundations. The best theology I was ever taught was not by a bishop or an archbishop or a vicar. The best theology I was ever taught was by a 79-year-old woman called Margaret, who was my granny, who died when I was 10. She taught me more about God than anybody else I've ever met. And my granny used to have a little box on her dressing table called a promises box. I don't think you get these anymore. It looked like that. Anyone ever seen one of those before? Yeah. And she kept it on her little thing. And it was a little tin box. And you opened it up and you would use a hair clip to pull out one of those tiny little scrolls and you'd unravel it. And there'd be a Bible verse on it. And that all the promises are in the Bible. And my granny would read them out to me one after the other and say, God hasn't broken this one yet. And I'd pull another one. Has he broken this one? No, she'd say, he's kept that one too. And promise after promise. I would try and trick her. And she'd look me in the face and go, Mark, God never will break his promises. So if your life's feeling a bit fragile this morning, the foundations are wobbly, then I will encourage you to build your life on God, on Jesus, and on his promises. For the New Testament tells us his word is secure. Let me prove my point. Here's just 4 of those little promises from my granny's box. Number 1, the Lord is my rock and my fortress and my deliverer. He is my rock in whom I take refuge. He is my rock and my salvation, my fortress, I will never be shaken. To you, O Lord, you are my rock, you will never turn a deaf ear to me. The Lord Almighty is with us, the God of Jacob is our fortress. Friends, you can rely on God. He ain't going to let you down. One of my friends is a vicar, and he said, Mark, I was preaching on being able to rely on God, and I was trying to find a sermon illustration to hang this on. Those of us who preach, it is the biggest nightmare, trying to find an appropriate illustration to hang your sermon on, so you all remember the illustration more than the sermon. And he said, I'm trying to find an illustration. And I thought, I'm just going to have a bath and a glass of wine and think about this. Now, picture the scene. He's just become the vicar of this new parish. The PCC have spent a fortune doing up the vicarage. New wiring, new heating, new lighting, new decoration for the new vicar coming. Thousands spent. Andrew goes to have his bath. He lies in his bath, he's pondering, and he still can't think of an illustration. It's time to get out. He stands up. The moment he stands up in his bath, the bath cracks. Have you ever seen a bath full of water move through a vicarage? Down the stairs, along the corridor, fusing every circuit along the way, causing the smoke detectors to go off, the sprinkling systems to go off, everything, mayhem. It costs over 25 grand to fix the damage after his bath. He said, you know something, Mark? I thought I could have relied on my bath. And I said, mate, you really relied on Jesus. He said, I'm going to hit you. But there was this illustration. Friends, we can't rely on anything else in this world, but we can rely on Jesus. What is your life built on this morning? What is the foundation? Is it on Jesus or on something else? St. Paul gives us this wonderful image in the book of Ephesians. You are God's household, built on the foundations of the apostles and prophets, with Christ Jesus himself as the chief cornerstone. In him the whole building is joined together and rises to become a holy temple in the Lord. And in him you are being built together to become a dwelling in which God lives by his Spirit. As you build your life on rock, you build it with Christ as its cornerstone. The cornerstone is the most important stone in any building, and Christ is our cornerstone. So as I finish this morning, my question is this. There's two images for you. A house built on sand, and Edinburgh Castle built on rock. What is your life built on this morning? Is it built on sand, or is it built on the rock? For if you build your life on Christ as your foundation, he is steadfast, he is sure, he is strong, he is faithful. We can rely on him, we can depend on him, and we can build our lives on him. Our rock, our fortress, our cornerstone. Let's pray. As we pray, just for a moment, let's just look at those two images on the screen again. You see, the house on the left actually would be a much nicer house to live in. It's by the beach, fabulous view. It's in Florida, not in Scotland. Sunshine, although maybe not depending on who won the presidential election, I suppose. It's got sunshine, paradise. But what's it built on? Edinburgh Castle, that building you're looking at, was built 900 years ago. It's withstood Scottish weather for 900 years. Wind and rain and storm. It's withstood battle and attack from the enemies of all sides, and remains firm and solid and secure. Edinburgh is one of my favourite cities in the world. I'm half Scottish, which is why I can make fun of the Scottish people, because I am one. But you know what? That building is absolutely secure. So this morning, as you look at those two images, what is your life built on? And in a moment, I'm going to ask you to pray with me that God would build our lives, and we would build our lives on the foundation stone that is the rock, that is Christ himself. Lord, thank you for your word. The people listening that day applauded because they'd never heard anybody speak with such clarity. And your word is clear. And Lord, we live in a world where it's very easy for us to build our lives on soft foundations of sand. Because we're bright and intelligent and gifted and experienced, we've got resources. But it is only when the storm comes that we realise the foundation upon which we're built. So help us build our lives on rock, solid rock, secure rock, the rock that is God himself. That with Christ as the cornerstone, that our lives will withstand whatever storm this world throws at us. Storms of sickness and illness, storms of financial trouble and difficulty, storms of loneliness and pain, that our lives will be firm and secure. But as we look at our nation, full of people whose lives are built on sand, we pray that we as a church across this country, inspired by this week of prayer, would help more and more people across this nation to know their lives as well built on rock. Can I encourage the musicians to come back? we sing a song, please? All right. Thank you. Let's stand.